All right, welcome back to the Corrective Consciousness podcast. This is episode 3. I am your host, Fides the Bold, and this is...
Oh no, which one of us goes first? I am Lotus Prince.
And I'm Pyro Jack Frost.
Whoa,
Yeah, we have
special
an extra,
guest meeting.
Yeah, we have an extra host today, so anybody who knows us from our joint Let's Plays, we did a couple for Golden Axe here, all three of us, so we're long-time friends and love doing those Let's Plays together, so yeah, we're here all talking about what's going on in our week. So I'm going to first go over what I've been playing recently, and it's actually pretty funny. I went back to a couple old classics this week, and I actually got a chance to play Tetris DS again at a party.
Not gonna lie.
Nice.
Okay, well, clearly I'm in the minority because Pyro Jack Frost derived humor from that, but that's not funny to me at all.
Well, it's not funny. It's just like one of the better games, one of the better versions of Tetris. If you ask me, it's worth a lot right now because the game was made just before Nintendo lost its license to make Tetris games.
Tengen finally won.
No, it's more like the Tetris company who should have had the rights all along. Now has total control over Tetris.
But by the way, I'm flaking on this one because we had talked about this off, like when we weren't recording or whatever, but my memory might be hazy on this, but was Tetris DS one of those games where you do not need all of your friends to have the game to play multiplayer?
That's exactly why it's one of the best versions of it.
So if you have the game and your friends just have a DS, you could still play with local network?
Yeah, you can use any combination of DS, DSIs, or 3DSs.
That's super cool.
And you only need one cartridge to play 8-player, up to 8-player.
Oh, 8, that's crazy.
And if I remember correctly, there were like different modes and like
Yeah.
attack mode and puzzle mode. Was there puzzle mode in that?
Yeah, and there's also a mode called push mode, where you're kind of trying to do a tug of war kind of thing, which is really neat. It has a buildup of blocks on two sides of the screen, and you're both trying to like beat down the blocks that are on your side. It's a particularly great version of Tetris. It's really refined, even though that I like that the Tetris company has the rules. I think Nintendo blew it out of the water with this one. There are some really big Tetris fans that are a big fan of the Grandmaster series.
That's been on a few of the Games Done Quick series where you can see the guys just beating the credits, which is if for those of you who don't know, you really should go to sites like YouTube and just look up, I don't remember what the year was or the name, but you'll find it easily enough. Just look up Games Done Quick Tetris, and you are going to see some magic. It's absolutely ridiculous.
In that particular, in the credits there, the blocks are invisible.
Yeah, so you have to have insane.
Wow.
Yeah, you have to have insane memory, and you can see these people either beat it or, worst case scenario, get really far. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and there are special conditions on top of that in order to get the best ranking of Master. And it's a lot of people don't even know how it functions. It's kind of random. So like them getting a master, a master distinction at the end of that is particularly special. What's really cool about those, it's just really awesome to see that. But it was only ever released in arcades. It was an arcade game made by Sega. When Sega had rights to make Tetris games in
Everyone's
Japan.
had Tetris at some point, it seems.
Well, Sega's made it, Atari's made it, Nintendo's made it, THQ and Ubisoft, and I think maybe Electronic Arts at one point. But the Tetris company has licensed it out to most of them, except for probably Nintendo. They might have done it for Tetris DS, but I'm not quite sure.
I remember that Tetris was one of the first games I think I ever played, because it just came with our Windows God knows what PC when I was a kid.
Yeah, same here. I think it might be like a lot of people's firsts in that sense, from our generation at least, or generations before ours.
My first version of Tetris was actually a Game Boy.
Oh, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
And that was one of the coolest because you could play it wherever you felt like it. That was kind of like, wasn't that one of the things that really kind of like, I don't know about that game in particular, but that's one of the things that really made the Game Boy take off, wasn't it?
It was the killer app for the Game Boy. It was packaged with the Game Boy in a lot of sense. It was the perfect portable game at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was Candy Crush before there was a Candy Crush. I mean,
yeah, that's a good point actually.
Like businessmen would buy a Game Boy to play Tetris, like on planes and stuff like that, just to give people an idea. Like it was. And that was back when video games were seen as a childhood thing. It was more akin to playing something like chess or checkers, rather than like a kiddie board game. It was it was almost like an intellectual video game that anybody could play. Kids, adults, moms, businessmen. Like everybody would play this game. People would buy a Game Boy specifically to play it. Kind of like Wii Sports. Not too different than Wii Sports because people would buy an entire Wii just for Wii Sports.
And the convenient part was that in America it came with a system, so you didn't even have to go find Wii Sports either.
Yeah. So Nintendo knew that when they made the Wii, they recognized that potential and it worked.
But they recognized it later. From what I've heard, it did not come with the Wii in Japan. It did for America though. So I think they realized how crazy it got, and they're like, okay, let's so Wii Sports is the best seller for the Wii because it has to be, but at the same time, if you look at the data, even so, it's still like it's not like it beat it just because it came with the system. Like it destroys its competition in terms of sales.
It is the number one best-selling console game of all time, I believe.
Again, you have to buy a Wii in America, or you have to buy to play the game, you have to buy the Wii in the first place in America, so it wins by default. But again, it's not like it cheated to win for that reason. Like, it is by far the best seller on the system. And if you're saying of all consoles, then there you go. It's further testament to that. It's not like the Wii is the most popular system ever made, although it really did take off for non-gamers as well.
It's pretty close. I think the PS2 is the only one that beats it.
Yeah, PS2 is ridiculous. I think what also helped the Wii was Wii Fit, because it kind of went into the sort of non-gamer category and was able to sell to far bigger audiences.
Grandmothers and they had to Nintendo. They've done a good job of packaging games in their consoles, so people who wouldn't necessarily buy the systems will buy it just for those games.
It also for a long time was the number one device that Netflix was viewed on.
I remember that. My brother had like the sort of like the disc that had that gave the Wii the ability to do Netflix.
Yeah, that was before they had the app.
Exactly, yeah. My brother had the old school, like, get Netflix on your Wii thing.
Get this for rarities. I have the PS3 disc to get Netflix on your PS3 before they enabled apps.
I didn't even know that existed.
Crossbar, on the cross media bar. I even have it in its original sleeve. I don't know if it'll ever be worth anything, but it's kind of cool to have it.
Just for the sake of having it.
Yeah.
It's 10 years down the line when there's no longer, or 20, 30 years down the line when PS3 no longer has online functionality, finally I can use that Netflix disc.
It's kind of like the DS browser cartridge that you would put in your GBA slot to get an internet browser on the damn thing.
Yeah, same thing with and the same goes with the Dreamcast.
Yeah, well, there's an even funnier one. So if you had a DS, a regular DS before the one that came out before the DS Lite, the DS Fat is what it's sometimes referred to as, the browser cartridge that you could buy in stores, even though that was rare, would not fit in it. They made it flush to the DS Lite, which has a shorter cartridge slot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So you would actually need to go on Nintendo's website to get the one that would fit the fat one.
Actually, speaking of really oddly specific pieces of game hardware that you bought for a very, very specific reason, so you can't find them anymore, I think I've mentioned this to you before, but Power Jack Frost, I don't think so. I remember one time I was at a retro game store, and every once in a while they get little curiosities like that, but one of my favorite things that I saw was before Blu-rays really took over, I saw a piece of hardware that would attach to your Xbox 360 so you could play HD DVDs.
I think awesome. I've heard of that.
Yeah. It was just like, wow, there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Microsoft doesn't support it anymore for the 360, so...
Okay.
I remember when Microsoft used to have a wireless adapter you had to buy separately to plug into your 360.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I actually have one of those.
They have a habit of taking things out of their systems. I mean, the Xbox One, I don't have one, but from what I heard, it's a little bit better. But I know that the 360 and even maybe the Xbox, bad habit of not putting things in the system that they probably should have had, and then selling it for, like, the wireless adapter was, I believe, $100.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and it was the same thing with the original Xbox. I have an Xbox One. I'm the only one out of the three of us that does. And it is, in many ways, design-wise, an apology for a lot of past sins.
Well, I think especially the Kinect, right?
Well, nowadays there aren't even really many Kinect games even being made. You don't have to have it attached to the system. And that's really funny considering that it used to be something that sold Xbox 360s. It was really popular for a very short time.
Well, actually, that makes
for a very short time though. I feel because like none of the Kinect games I feel were more. It was kind of like the Wii games where
the really early
they were
remote.
meant specifically to use the Kinect, and they weren't necessarily great games, but they were meant as like a mini game things.
Yeah, well, it's the same
even
thing.
Even those were not that like amazing games.
Well, yeah, it's the same thing with early Wiimote games, and even with the PlayStation 3 6-axis. Like we were talking about Uncharted 4 a lot in our last episode of this podcast, but what we did not mention was that in Uncharted, the original Uncharted, you would throw grenades by like manipulating the controller.
The 6-axis.
Yeah, manipulating the 6-axis, and then in Uncharted 2, all of a sudden, nope, you hold the aim button, you move the control stick, because that first method of throwing grenades, it worked, but it's like you didn't have to do that. So like I think a lot of companies were obligated to do things like that to push the technology, but like in retrospect it can interfere with the game. With Uncharted 1, the game was still playable, but it was kind of like, did I have to do this? You know, I could have just moved the stick.
Yeah, I remember
like the sorry.
I was just going to say that Uncharted 2 allowed you to pick between the two.
Oh,
setups.
I forgot about that. Oh, and there was
I was first curious if you had to, because it's been a while, but also I was going to say
with
that
one,
the Vita,
I think you did.
The Vita, even the back, like a lot of the touchscreens on that weren't used for mini games. I think many of the special features of these systems that they put, like the DS, in the very first few games, they had a lot of touchscreen stuff that was part of the game. But as they made more games, they made it optional, and it was just like an extra thing that you could use, which makes me wonder why they even put these things. They're cool little features, but
they increase the cost of the system and you never use them.
Not
only that, but also it doesn't allow for a lot of cross-platform, and I know that a lot of third-party companies probably just throw it in later because if they want to make it for multiple systems, they can't have all these little special things for each one.
But not only that, like, maybe I'm wrong about this one, maybe I'm just being an optimist, but I really think that they thought that technology would be more used than ended up being, where all players really want to do is play games. Like, the biggest controversy lately regarding this kind of thing was, I think, not controversy, but like complaint was, and I haven't played this, so I am talking only from hearsay, but the new Starfox game for the Wii U, where the controls are like you're obligated to use the pad and stuff like that, when you really didn't necessarily have to, and there were like either free buttons or buttons that were being used for stuff that you could have used it in that way. You know, like I noticed like Zombie, Zombie U, that game, that game was freaking cool, man, and I played a bunch of it at there we go. Advice's place. I'm like trying so hard not to say a real name. I was playing it at Advice's.
Don't let them know. They only know through
your
my
SoundCloud just straight up spells it out. Whoops, spoilers. Got me there, but like
not hard to dox me.
Yeah, dox your SoundCloud. But like I was playing a bunch of Zombie U at Advice's place, and this did not interfere with the game. And honestly, I actually thought it was really cool. But when you go to your it's like Demon Souls or Dark Souls in that there's no pausing ever. So like if you go to your inventory, you look at the inventory stuff, on your pad, and then the actual TV screen just shows your character rifling around through stuff you can't see. Same goes for, like, you hold the pad up and look around with it, kind of like you would, like, the 3DS when you're just moving around, and you can look for things to scan or to hack or whatever, but that's only viewable on the pad. People watching the TV screen get nothing. So I was thinking, if I ever did a Let's Play of this game, I would have to explain what I was doing. But then it was released on Steam and on the PS4, PlayStation Network, and I think the Xbox One? And all of a sudden, whoa, when you go to the pause menu, there's just a section of the screen for your inventory, because that's how that plays. So it's like, again, I actually thought it made the game cool for the Wii U. Like, it wasn't a detractor, but it obviously wasn't needed, because here we are.
Well,
yeah, I agree.
Human Revolution had that kind of
Yeah,
stuff
Revolution had
too.
the same thing. That
Same with the Dark Souls games, where they just go to the inventory right in the same screen.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, like, just watch out what you're doing. I don't know why you're even in your inventory screen if there are enemies around. You know, it's that kind of logic. Like, go to your inventory when you can.
Yeah, and I agree with you that, like, they thought that these features would be amazing, but then you have to think, if they thought that all these companies would make games specifically for their system.
Yeah, that's why I think the 3DS does such a good job, because its gimmick is 3D, and I think, like, just about every game has that, and the players can just turn it on or off at will, and it's not like you have to play differently based on it or anything. It's just like, want to use a cool feature, like, okay, like, that's what I think is pretty cool about it.
Yeah, some games I do know actually don't require it to be shut off or shut off on its own, just so the games can run better. There are only very few of them, though.
Okay, but even so, it's not like, oh man, the 3D like affected my play style or anything. It's just a cool feature to have.
Yeah, I don't like mandates to use these different features. I like
that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing.
Yeah,
I think it's up to the developers to use them well, and also decide if they should give players a choice, because maybe they'll do like a preferred method, but also include it for us old fogies that like things like D-pads.
That's just it. When I was watching video game, like the channel Video Games, well, the channel is Far From Subtle, but they have this show Video Games Awesome, where they'll just play games or watch videos of like E3 or whatever. And I remember I saw the video when they announced the Kinect for the first time for the 360, and the guy was going like, "Whoa, you can move your hands around and the game responds and everything." And this was before people complained about the Kinect's kind of wonky functionality, but like even then, when the guys on Far From Subtle were watching the video, they were just like, do we need this? Like, can you imagine years down the line people will be advertising a controller like, now with just the press of a button you can get what you want? And it's like, yes, seriously, like, that's exactly what happened.
Well,
I mean, not the advertisement, but gameplay.
Just to even go to show like what what this kind of stuff it does to people, is like, fans will actually go back and hack them and like in particular, like Donkey Kong Country Returns has been hacked by the...
Oh, because you have to shake the Wiimote to do the pounding, and that like really messes with your playstyle sometimes.
Well,
in a precise platforming game.
It's to roll, actually, I think.
Oh, that's much worse, because it's like Donkey Kong, the country games, Donkey Kong Country, have always been really precise, relatively fast-paced platformers. So when you're shaking the Wiimote, like, how easily can you mess this up?
Well, rolling in that game is particularly important because it gives you a speed boost for some jumps that you need for precise jumping.
Well, not to mention, with the Donkey Kong Country games in particular, like, you might have thought it was like a cool secret strat back in the SNES days, but it's a required, like almost required gameplay mechanic now, whereas you can jump anytime you're not jumping. Like, so what I mean is, you're supposed to, in some cases, roll off of ledges, and when you're in the air, then, like, when you're in the air falling, then you jump, and you'll even see banana trail placements done like that to like hint that you can do it. The game is telling you, no, we actually encourage this. So if you're shaking the Wiimote to roll, you'd better be careful.
Yeah, they fixed it in the DS version, but like, who wants to play the 3DS version?
Well, they also fixed it in Tropical Freeze, right? Or, I mean,
oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, fixed that the game just doesn't do that, but yeah.
Yeah, no. Yeah, well, they realized that it was a mistake.
Yeah. Like, I get what you're doing. You don't want to take up a button for it, but it's like, no, dude, this is a platformer. I need this.
Yeah, Gravity Rush is another example of a game like that where
it's on the PS4 now.
I was gonna say, like, I played it on Vita, the first one, and it was a great game, but at times it was very annoying to have to move the Vita around, to like aim yourself, and it's one of those things that they didn't really need it. And I was gonna say another thing is, I agree with the whole giving the players options, but also the gameplay should come first before the controls. And if it's something that's not, I mean, I'm not a video game designer, so I don't know these things, but I feel like if the game's not fun with just basic controls, then it doesn't matter what other features
you're going to have a bad time. I mean, that all comes down to different gamers' opinions, because some people value, like most people, honestly, value the gameplay over everything. Personally, I value story as long as the gameplay doesn't make the game unplayable, but I'm in the minority on this one. Some people...
But even if the story is great and the controls are crap and you have to do things that you don't want...
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I can take mediocre to bad controls. I can't take, like... I can't play this, like, I can take, like, I wish they'd improved, instead of, like, obviously I draw the line when I can't play the game.
By the way, I did want to mention before we got too far away from it that there is a Kinect game that is really worth anybody playing for the 360. I don't know about the Xbox One, but I played a game called Gunstringer. I don't know if anybody...
I heard that was great.
I've heard of it.
It's really, really, really fun. And it's basically playing like Virtual Cop or something like that,
nice.
But with your fingers, but with like a really great sense of humor.
Yeah, everything's like marionettes or something.
Everything's marionettes, and it's goofy as hell.
That's great.
And like it's just a really, really fun game, and any one of us would have a lot of fun with it. And it's a long game too. Like there's a lot of content, especially for a game like that. For a game like that, it's a long game.
Okay. By the way, before we go on to different subjects, I just wanted to come back to what Pyrojack Frost was saying about Gravity Rush being, later released on the PS4. My big gripe right now, because we got Gravity Rush, so I'm happy, but my big gripe right now is Uncharted Golden Abyss, because that's another game that requires the actual Vita, because there are some parts in the game where you're crossing logs and you can easily fall off in either direction, and you have to manipulate the Vita to like readjust your balance. But we've already had games in the past where you do that and you use the control stick to kind of try shifting your weight, and it just drives me crazy that I can't play it on the PS TV or anything because of like a little thing, like, especially because, again, 6-axis, we have it. Like, help me out here.
I'm particularly impressed that Tearaway got ported to the PS4, because that game was heavily used the Vita's, like, particular functions. So I'm really surprised that got ported at all, because there's like a lot of stuff going on with that game. Like, it uses the cameras and stuff like that,
and the back sensor,
and the back sensor. So I guess they fixed it up, and I'm sure it's really great.
Yeah,
I'm
I was just
interested
about
to
to
see
ask.
how they fixed it.
That's the thing. I was just about to ask. Like, I wonder if they had to make any compromises, because I know that there's the game 999, like 9 persons, 9 doors, 9. I forgot the other thing.
9
persons, 9
rooms.
hours, 9 doors.
9
hours. Oh, I screwed it up. All right, but like 999 for the DS, and like some of the puzzles rely on touch screens and possibly the dual screen. And I know that the game later was released on iOS, but they completely removed the puzzles because they were unplayable in that format. So like, I'm wondering if it was anything like that, where they had to like, I doubt they would like kill the gameplay of Tearaway on a freaking gaming console, but I'm wondering if they had to make any sacrifices.
Yeah, there's been some recent ones where they've actually surprised me by adding functionality that I didn't expect them to. Like in particular, I had bought Adventures of Mana on iOS, which is a remake of Final Fantasy Adventure for the Game Boy, and it's also it's the predecessor to Secret of Mana.
Yeah. By the way, real quick, just for the listeners out there, how the hell is a Final Fantasy game a Mana game? It's not. It was just called Final Fantasy Adventure in the United States to help sell the games, because we'd heard of Final Fantasy.
Actually, Final Fantasy sells, and it still does.
If you take a look, those series of games, I believe the Saga games at least, the Final Fantasy Legends series 1 through 3, were actually Saga games.
Maybe
like
that's
Unlimited
what I was
Saga.
thinking then. Maybe that's what I was thinking.
And in Japan, they're actually called like Final Fantasy Gaiden Saga. But since then, like, Saga games are kind of their own thing now.
So
but,
maybe I was confusing Legend with Adventure then. That might have been my problem.
But these were Seiken Densetsu games, and they had nothing to do with being Final Fantasy, as you know. But I just thought it was an interesting tidbit that a lot of people say, oh, no, they were Saga games. It's like, actually, they did say Final Fantasy Gaiden or something like that.
That is kind of funny.
For the Legend games, at least. But Adventure was like, it's Seiken Densetsu 1.
Oh, so I was still right at least. Okay.
Yeah, you were right.
Okay.
You were right.
Woo, saved.
But I just thought that was an interesting tidbit. It's actually a pretty faithful remake of the original game. There already was a remake that came out in the U.S. called Sword of Mana for the GBA. But it was really chatty and stupid. It wasn't like a very good game because of that. And they overdid it in terms of adding exposition to a game that didn't really need it.
Gotcha.
And this game is more of a one-for-one remake with just more modern graphics.
That's cool.
And more modern saving and things like that. What's particularly good about what they did was they just modernized the whole thing, but it was for iOS for a little while, so you had to like control your character with like a faux D-pad. It just wasn't the kind of precision that I wanted from an adventure RPG.
iOS games I think are better when they're like actually iOS games. Like, do you really want to play a Final Fantasy game on your phone? Like, you could, but like,
At least it wasn't grid-based. Like, for instance, when I went, I played the remake of Dragon Quest 1 on iOS, and I was like, okay, I'm game. I want to play like a better version of Dragon Quest 1 because the original version has some, saving stuff and just like some user interface stuff that just isn't fun, makes it not fun to play anymore.
Oh, the crazy like Nintendo password system.
Well, it had a password system in Japan, but the US version didn't. But it has some stuff like it's hard to save. It's not as good as a modern game would be. Let's just say that.
I have to say that like. I find that most phone games are really only fun if they don't require Twitch gaming.
Exactly.
Like I used to play, I forget what the game was called, but there was an action RPG that I played, and it ended up not being that great because if the controls
went
out at any time, I couldn't. What?
Was it Zenonia?
It may have been, but
yeah,
either
those
way,
were pretty popular.
It just didn't work out that well. And then also I've currently been trying the Final Fantasy X whatever the hell it's called, but it's one of their mobile games.
Explorers?
No, it's a phone game. It's like Xvideos or something like that.
Okay.
And it's cool because it's like a regular RPG, even though it has like the free to play sort of stuff where you hire other Final Fantasy characters to fight with you, but the controls I don't find that great at all. And I was also playing Final Fantasy 1 on my phone because I got it for free somehow, and or 2. It was Final Fantasy 2, and it was good, like as good as Final Fantasy 2 was. That's another story, but the movement wasn't that great, and it was just it didn't click.
That was what I was trying to bring up is that I tried to play the remake of Dragon Quest 1, and those games your character moves up, down, left, and right. There's nothing in between. So having a virtual D-pad is particularly frustrating because it's hard to get exactly where left, right, and up and down are.
Mm-hmm.
So like trying to get your character where you want them to go, especially when you have to inspect things, is really annoying. Let's just put it that way. And also to select things on menus, it's just it's a pain. But at least with Adventures of Mana, your character has an analog style movement, so it's not as bad. So I will give it credit there. However, it's still not exactly what I wanted. And they said that they were going to release a Vita version in Japan, and people are like, whoa, why don't you release the Vita version here? And Square Enix was like, nobody plays the Vita, that kind of thing in the U.S. Which is pretty much true, but the three of us do.
I mean, it helps. But that is true. But like, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. If you're not going to sell us games, then of course you're not going to play them. Like,
so
but it is a big cost though. So I kind of understand where they're coming from. But it's kind of disappointing because I actually thought Vita was a pretty good system, but it just didn't get the traction that.
As a system, it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's a great piece of hardware. So it was the PSP for that matter. But it's all up to companies to provide software for it, and with the Vita version of Adventures of Mana, they actually surprisingly decided to release the English version out of the blue. So I was really excited about that. And they released it, and I bought it a second time. So
nice.
I thought it was really, really cool. But yeah, getting back to Tetris.
That ship has sailed a long time ago. Nope, changing subjects.
No, we've moved on.
I hate Tetris. It's too late. Yeah.
We've moved on. But anyway, so they, me and a friend played a bunch of it, and I got really into it. What's really great about it is that it has a lot of really neat functions that you can turn on or off in a battle. Like you can bank pieces, like a piece that won't fit for a particular situation. You could choose to hold it and then use it whenever you feel like.
That's clever.
And you could press up to drop a piece really quickly.
Oh yeah, that's right. Like down drops it faster, but up like insta drops.
It's an instant drop, yeah. So it makes the game really snappy. You can also turn on or off items too in a battle, which is neat. And it overall, it's just a really, it's really snappy. It's easy to play. It's my favorite version of Tetris, particularly because it's portable still, and you can play with so many people with just one cartridge. My big issue with it right now is that nobody can get a hold of it. It's like a $60 or $70 game.
Well, that's okay. You got it. Just have people over.
Yeah, but
I know.
I want other people to play it. I'm not an elitist in any
I know in the
sense
general sense.
Yeah,
because that is one thing that's bothered me because it's like, want to play like Resident Evil DS, like Deadly Silence, like do you really have multiple friends who have a DS and that game? Really? How many people do you know who have freaking Resident Evil DS?
It was
that's
cool.
what I liked about the whole download play thing that the DS had.
Yeah, you can still download the game, to be fair. That does make everything a lot easier.
I mean, like the games that you could buy and your friends didn't need to have it also. Like Mario Kart
that's
had
the
that,
problem.
I think, and those games are great, even though the options were limited, potentially, for the people who didn't own it. It really allowed for what games try to do, is be a little bit social and have your friends over, and you don't want to force your friend to have to buy a $50 game just to play with you.
Yeah, and Nintendo's pushed that a lot. Like, the GameCube just had 4 controller ports. Like, that was crazy. Like, systems didn't do that. I don't even... Like, was that the first system to do that? 4 controller ports? Because the most I'm used to is 2.
Technically, yes. I
know that
the
there were
Xbox had it as well, but I think they came out around the same time.
Okay, because I know that there were multi-taps for like almost every system, but like to just have 4 players right now.
There are some notable, really easy ways to play 4-player on a couple systems, and I'll just go over them real quick because they're interesting. But for instance, on the Atari 2600, there was paddle controllers.
Okay.
So you could play Pong, and those paddle controllers actually came as a double controller.
Oh, that's cool.
So when you put it in, you would put it into a port, and you would actually have 2 controllers in the same controller port. So you could play Pong with technically 1 controller setup. What was also neat was that they came out with a game called Warlords later, which is one of the great first 4-player games that was a lot of fun. It's basically like 4-player Pong. Okay. You each have a castle in each corner of the screen, and you're defending it with your paddle, and you're like flinging the ball at each other. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun, and you could play that with another Pong setup.
Sure.
So it wasn't an included setup, but it was something that made it easy that some people had.
Well, no, I mean
rather
that
than
just makes me think of
multi-tap.
Super Smash Brothers Wii U, where you could all just walk in with Wii Motes right now, but they were cool enough to sell the adapters for the GameCube controllers, so you could actually have like an 8-controller GameCube setup.
Oh yeah, for sure. And what's another one? Oh, okay. For PC Engine and TurboGrafx 16, to play even 2-player, you needed a multi-tap.
Oh, wow.
So almost everybody who had one of those systems had a multi-tap, and the multi-tap goes up to 5. So, I mean, yes, it was a multi-tap, but almost everybody had
Yeah, it was obligatory enough that it's not really considered an extra step or much of one.
I mean, they should have just included it in the in the box, because like who wants a system and not have any 2-player functionality? I mean, come on, let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the like hallmarks of video gaming at home is you could play with at least one other person.
Yeah,
and that's another thing that a lot of games are doing nowadays. The bad things that games are doing is they're not allowing split screen co-op.
Yeah, that drives me crazy.
At times, I understand why. It is a lot of processing power to be doing that, but that I guess it might just be me too, because we grew up in the old, hey, let's go over someone's house and play games together.
Yeah.
Nowadays, kids are like, let's just stay home and play online. So I understand why they took it out, but games are missing that. And there's a difference between being social on. I mean, I don't want to get into why kids suck nowadays, but like there's a difference between being social online
Get a job.
and being social on a couch and like talking to each other like that.
Well, no, there is. It's just a dynamic thing. Like, when you watch movies with your friends, like, it's a very different environment. And by the way, another thing about no split screen is that I made a similar point earlier in this conversation, but, 20 years from now, when the current system's online functionality is no longer up, you just don't have multiplayer. Sorry.
That's
too
true.
bad. Yeah.
A lot of indie games that have actually brought back couch co-op and couch play,
which has been cool.
with like things like Towerfall.
Like the only way I think you could circumvent it would be like the Resident Evil like outbreak gimmick when you're setting up like a LAN connection, if you can manage to pull that off.
Yeah, I mean, but who other than like me and you guys would ever do that? I mean, I would do that I would go through the effort just to do it.
It's a pain in the ass. I know specifically for Outbreak there are like very specific servers you can like look for in Japan, but like again, that's just because a couple of gamers were really dedicated and set it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where longevity is never really thought of when these companies make these games.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
who can blame them really? Because how are they going to make money off of it later?
Yeah,
but still.
And see also patching of any kind. I mean, we love patching. They fix things, but in 20 years, I pick up your game for the first time, it's not going to be patched. There's no way, unless like I find like some sort of archive site that has the patch uploaded onto it, which might be possible, but good luck.
That's a very good point.
Like one of the biggest
games. I think even Dark Souls 3 had a day one patch, and if you want to go back and play that when they don't have the patch available anymore, you can't play the game basically.
Here's my favorite example of that.
Tony Hawk 5.
Yeah, I was going to mention that because I saw it on Guru Larry's Fact Hunt. Now, I had seen all over the internet that game had like a day one like 7 gig patch, and it's like, what does that even mean? Well, it was the game. Like the disc came with basically the tutorial level. I think that was it.
Jesus
Christ. If for some reason you wanted to pick up Tony Hawk 5 like in a million years, you have a tutorial. Congratulations. Like
there
the patch
was literally
for that. I think they had to push the game out because they had the rights to it and they needed to like maintain them or something.
It got released on the very last day that they had the rights for it. So
yeah, because they realized we have the game's rights. Why aren't we doing anything with it?
Well, they just wanted to fart it out. I mean, really,
yeah. But literally, the patch was the game. Like it was because it's like, what kind of patch is 7 gigs? Well, no patch is 7 gigs. That was the game.
They had to get it ready enough for retail in some form or another to be released on that day. That way they could have the time to actually patch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things though where patching the ability to patch games and add stuff to it later is great, because there were games that we played back in the day that they were still fun even though they were broken, but they were broken and you wanted them to be fixed and you wanted them to be longer and be able to add stuff to it. But
and yeah,
there's
well,
a lot of negatives that come with that as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, because in the old days, the good news was that they'd make damn sure that the games work before releasing them, or that's the cost of a ton of shipping, a ton of cartridges, etc., and you just eat that because you can't fix the games.
Yes and no. I mean, on the other hand, a lot of
the downside is you can resell the games themselves in patched form,
True.
like the 12,000 versions of Street Fighter 2, you know.
But even so, back then, if your games have bugs, you just say like, these are the bugs we need to fix. Otherwise, it's okay.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays, they don't need to do that. They're like, oh, we'll fix the bugs that are easy to fix now, and we'll make a patch later. It's not a big deal.
I mean, they occasionally patched games, like fixed versions of games, but
you could see like version 1.1, 1.2 of like Donkey
Final
Kong
Fantasy
Country,
games and
Ocarina
stuff
of
like
Time.
That's
you know,
true.
Even
That's
with
true.
but
with
that was
sometimes
only like
they
super
didn't-
popular games, though.
Sometimes they didn't patch it though. Like they patched it, but sent it into the wild patched. People didn't realize it was a newer game necessarily.
Well, no,
It'd be
that's
like
the thing.
same
It would just be a
box.
later release. So like
Yeah.
even within like Gold's cartridge Ocarina of Time, there are different versions, and you'd have to like open the ROM to find out what it is.
My favorite one is Revenge of Shinobi. Revenge of Shinobi has like 4 versions.
Well, one version was straight up copyright, right?
All the different versions have copyright reasons as
that's
to why
hilarious.
they were changed.
Because
So,
I won't spoil it. You go ahead.
Yeah. The first one, first of all, they did all these parodies of well-known things. There's like Godzilla's in the game, like actual Godzilla, like not even like a fake version of Godzilla.
Yeah, I was surprised that Shinobi 3 kept that. It was like a robot Godzilla.
Yeah. So he's exactly like the real model of Godzilla. There's Spider-Man
Yep.
is straight up in there, Batman, and it's just like
And
Hey,
the-
those are 2 different properties. They can't do that.
Well, it gets better. Like
And
Rambo
Incredible
turns into the
Hulk,
Hulk. Yeah.
Rambo and the Terminator are all in. Actually, they're all in the same level.
Well, doesn't one of them turn into the other, like Rambo to Terminator or Rambo to Hulk or
Yes.
something?
Yes, but it's still they're all in the
Well,
same.
that actually makes it funnier for me because it's like
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, exactly, and they meant it to be funny. It's just, but
I just love the idea that Shinobi's this ridiculously hard game, and you're trying to save your girlfriend from this evil ninja, and then this stupid level happens.
also the title screen has the actual eyes of Sonny Chiba.
Oh, that's right.
So they later like got rid of that. So each version takes a bit of that stuff out, or like modifies it enough so that it's clear that it's a parody. But one interesting thing is later on, they didn't remove Spider-Man. They kept him in, and they actually just put a Marvel Comics logo. At the
That's
beginning,
great.
like, they struck a deal with Marvel because Sega was also making Spider-Man games at the time.
Oh, that's fantastic. So
they
Marvel was like,
probably
yeah.
just made up and said, no, this is actually Spider-Man.
That's great. So
like-
Spider-Man is canon in the Shinobi universe.
But
Peter Parker's
later
immortal.
Versions like on the Wii, he's out of there.
Oh.
So he's just replaced by something else. So there's little things like that, and even in the original Shinobi, they had like Andy Warhol pictures of Marilyn Monroe in the background. It's
So weird.
yeah, they did kinds of crap like that in Alex Kidd in Shinobi World. Like, this is just Sega. Sega gets in trouble all the time for copyright infringement.
We thank them for it.
I love it because they just think it's funny. They're
And it
goofballs.
is.
They're goofballs, but they do it without thinking a lot of times.
Yeah.
Well, no,
yeah.
remember the end of like Alien Storm, where like your performance is rated by like a group holding up cards that are like 7 out of 10, and like one of them is just Johnny Five from Short Circuit for no reason.
Yeah, and they didn't go get the rights for that.
There's no way.
They wouldn't have done that.
I don't know if they had the money to get the rights for it anyway.
Well, Sega at the time could have. Sega was a huge company at the time. Maybe not now because they're sickly, but
That's one way to
they're
put it.
actually doing kind of all right now. They're kind of like in good graces right now with gamers, right?
Yeah,
As of right now.
they got the Yakuza games going on.
Well, they've just been making decent decisions lately, unlike their usual track record. Did you see the new Sonic game that they just announced? They announced
Sonic
I
Mania.
didn't look at the trailer, but I heard that it's like I don't know if this is the same one that I'm talking about.
It's going back
they're making
old
like
school.
a Generations 2 almost kind of game.
Well, no, well, you're on the right track. It's called
There are
Sonic
two
Mania,
games.
but it's going.
No. There are 2 games.
Oh.
Pyro Jack Frost just mentioned the 3D one, which is going to be kind of like a Generations 2.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
And then there's Sonic Mania.
That's the one I saw, yeah.
Which is a 2D game, 2D style game.
It's
that they
going back.
announced
It's
at the
going back
same
to like
time.
16-bit, maybe a little better.
It's actually programmed by Christian Whitehead, who's a really famous Sonic hacker.
Nice.
He's
Really?
made a lot of the really good Sonic hacks, and he also was programming this Sonic CD HD.
Oh, that was him?
Yeah, what ended up happening was he was basically making that as a fan game, and it was so good that Sega came out to him and said, "Yo, we could sell this. Like, why don't we put it out?" And he made the definitive version of Sonic CD. It's real widescreen.
Yeah, you could choose between the American or the European/Japanese tracks per
Soundtrack,
level, I believe.
yeah.
You could continue because Sonic CD was a brutal game, and if you get a game over, that's too bad.
He added tails to it. He also changed. He allows you to pick the style of speed dash that you want to use, like the later style or the earlier style.
That's cool.
There's a lot of things that he did to it, and you wouldn't want to play the Sega CD version anymore. It's just that good. And so he did a fantastic job. So they actually gave him the task of putting Sonic 1 and 2 on iOS, and those sold really well too.
Nice.
He did special edition things to those too, like he added Tails to Sonic 1, and Sonic 2 he added a level that was previously cut.
Oh, the Hidden Palace?
Yeah, he actually redesigned a level that wasn't ever completed. He redesigned it and put it back into the game.
Now, I forgot if this was iOS or 3DS, but you had mentioned that one of the Sonic releases on that gave you the option for Model 1 Genesis sound versus Model 2.
So that is any of the M2 Genesis conversions on 3DS.
Oh, it was 3DS, okay.
So those are exemplary emulations as well, but not from that particular gentleman. I would think that Christian would probably pick just Model 1 sound anyway, because Model 1 sound is really banging.
Sure.
But they asked him to make a brand new game, and they added a feature. Like a move to Sonic. There's this like drop down spin dash.
Yeah,
that
you could
he added
dash
to the
from
game.
when you land on the ground. Just hit,
Nice.
like almost literally hit the ground running. Like hit the ground rolling.
It looks bitchin'.
It
This
does.
is the first time I've actually been excited about a Sonic game, and I don't know when since Sonic Rush.
For me, I think it was Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. No, it was Sonic Adventure Director's Cut, because I think I got that after Battle. I was so hyped because I played it on the Dreamcast back in the day for a little bit, and I was like, wait a minute, you mean I could get that on a system I own? Oh my god.
I was never a huge Sonic fan, but and whenever they made the previous games, I just rolled my eyes like I knew Sonic, the games were good, and then just when they released these games, I just rolled my eyes, like the Werewolf one. I heard it was good, but that's besides the point. Just rolled my eyes at what they were doing with them, but I'm glad they're kind of going back to their roots.
Well, I'm happy they're going back to the roots in the right way, because they tried that before with Sonic 4 and it did not go over well.
I'm glad they're kind of realizing why, like, I guess I don't know if it's them realizing what people liked about Sonic, because people did like the other Sonic games, like certain groups of people, but I guess the people who are in control now grew up with Sonic, so they now want it to, they don't care about making games for kids. They're making games for people who want to play Sonic.
Yeah, and not to mention, even with the Werewolf one you mentioned, I think that was Sonic Unleashed. Like
Yes.
that game really did have good aspects about it. Like a lot of people complain about the Werewolf part because it's very slow and deliberate and platforming, and you fight enemies, and it's like what? But the parts where you play as regular Sonic are no holds barred, like the fastest I have ever seen Sonic. Like when you do the portions where you're running straight ahead, like you're like it's like almost POV shot, like you're just running forward. and you do the boost, that speed is ridiculous. Like it's incredible to look at, especially if you're like playing it well or watching someone who is. It's insane.
I just want to clarify that like not all Sonic games that in the modern era are bad either. I'm not.
No,
yeah. People liked Colors. People liked Generations. People liked to a degree. Yeah, people liked Generations to a degree. Sonic Boom, once it got fixed, it got a little bit of a better reception. It was broken.
Lost World is a pretty okay game too.
Lost World looked decent.
I'm not trying to say that the Sonic games are bad. I'm just saying they never seemed to be made to appeal to the people who grew up with Sonic. They changed too much for the people who.
Yeah, Sonic used to be about going fast. Although to be fair, even Sonic 1, the original, had some really slow like block pushing parts. Believe it or not, those were only in one level, but it was like, wait a second. Sonic 2 was like definitive Sonic. Like 3 is the better game, but 2 was the essence of Sonic the Hedgehog.
I would argue that 2's better, but that's just my personal opinion.
3 and Knuckles got more quote epic. You know, you got to play as the 3 characters. You had the emeralds, then the super emeralds, and the secret last level. Like, and the scales, like the stakes were high. Like, because you could see it was still just a Sonic game, but you could see like the world was getting burned up, and like you got to stop Metal Sonic, and what's this plot with Knuckles? Oh my god! But like, so Sonic 3 and Knuckles, you can argue is the best game, but I still think that the essence of Sonic, like gotta go fast, is Sonic 2.
Yeah,
it's like I've made this argument before where like the other game is better, but I just like this one more. Like Dark Cloud 2 or Dark Chronicle is better than Dark Cloud 1, but I'm sorry, I just like Dark Cloud 1.